that that is such an important skill to develop, specifically in the world that we live in now, where there is, and I didn't mention this, but there's a lot of Skype interviews going on right now. I had a very dear friend. She was one of my proteges, and I've developed her, and she just landed this great job, and it was all through Skype. And so step one was the phone interview. So let me speak to that first, and then I'll come back to Skype. So I always say, start by asking some very gentle questions of the person interviewing. So how's your day going? Just engage them and be like, oh, well, it's been a little bit hectic. Oh, really? Did you have a lot of interviews today? So just kind of start the dialogue so that you warm them up. So I think that with the phone interview piece, that's a great piece to just, again, have some very surface conversation. How is your day going? How long have you been with the organization? Just out of curiosity. You throw like a question or two there to, again, lets that guard come down a little bit and you get to know the real person. So that's a great way to start. Just start with some surface questions. To get back to the Skype piece, be aware of your body language, specifically with Skype. If you're in your own home, you feel very comfortable, right? A lot of us are like wearing jogging pants and then a nice shirt, I've done it, it's okay, So just be aware of your body language because you're still sitting there with someone, even if it's virtually. Be aware of your body language. So always, when you're doing those Skype or webcam interviews, keep that positive body language, a strong posture, keep your back up, shoulders forward, and just talk to them as if they were sitting across the table to you. Okay, what other questions? Yes?
I was just going to say for Skype, it's so important to try to look at the camera.
Yes! Because and I think that's a great point because, people are like looking off and, it creates a lack of engagement. Because remember, our body language is about eye contact. So if you're not making eye contact and you're staring off into space, even though the person is aware that it's Skype, they're still going to internalize that as you're not engaged. So I think that's an excellent point. Yes?
Even if you're not looking at the ceiling, if you're looking 2 inches away from the camera to their image on the screen, you're not looking at them.
No, you're not. And here's the thing. I actually, in the last organization I worked for before I started my company, it was a photography company. And when people do exactly what you're describing, it creates in the lens like a fishbowl effect. So your face is distorted on their end, and they're like, oh my goodness. I couldn't look at them because it was just, they were like, So I think that's a very good point because people are so close that it creates a distortion, which then that's the memory that they have of the interview versus, oh, this person gave great answers.
I wasn't referring to getting my face close to the camera. I'm just saying that if I'm looking at their image on the little screen,
okay,
my eye, it looks like I'm not interested in them.
Okay, yes.
Center.
Oh, okay, so that's, okay, I misunderstood the question. That is another good point. He's saying, if you're looking at their small image off to the side, your eye contact is not with them, you're like looking down here. So it looks like you're disinterested. So even though I'm talking to Natalie and I'm looking over here, it's very similar to the example we had with Nate earlier where I'm turning away. So I think that's a great call out, absolutely.
One of the things that I've done is put my laptop up on a little box because it raises the camera angle.
Yes.
So instead of looking from the upper, it's more front on, and it's a better view and represents you better.
I think, Francine, I think that's a great point. I think it also allows you to relax your shoulders because sometimes if you have it too low, you kind of hunch over. And then you get tired and you're doing this through the interview and they're like, do they really want this job or am I boring you? I mean, so I think that that's a great call out as well because it keeps your shoulders relaxed. It allows you to stay engaged and stay comfortable, which when we have that anxiety of an interview, comfort can make a huge difference in terms of how we come across to the person that's interviewing us. I think, Rob, we have one right here and then we have one here.
I also recommend FaceTime. Because I'm a recruiter, I do a lot of interviewing people who may be out of town. And FaceTime on the iPhone is great. They have the best camera.
Yeah.
So just another suggestion as well for interviews other than Skype and webcam.
Absolutely. And I think a good best practice along those lines could be to, start to use those tools now so that they're natural for you, so that you don't feel uncomfortable come the time to have one of those interviews. So as part of your repertoire and the resources, maybe start to have conversations with people now using FaceTime or Skype or whatever mode that you would like to use. So therefore, you're comfortable with it. So when you get on camera for an interview, it's old hat at that point.
I didn't think lockdown applied to the interview. That's my first question. We started out talking about lockdown. It sounded like you were adopting that toward the interview, and I was thinking it's really the opposite of lockdown.
Well, I mean, when I'm talking about lockdown for that, I mean lockdown in your comfort in yourself and of your skills as you're going into the interview.
Oh, okay. Discomfort, okay.
Yeah, just the comfort in yourself and that you're knowledgeable and that you have the skills to achieve the end goal of delivering that job. So lockdown, feel comfortable with yourself and be engaged about being authentic and being true to yourself.
I had one more question. Would there be follow-up, after the interview, like thank you notes and things like that?
It's always the best practice that I like to do. It creates that memory. And I think a great way to approach that is to not just say, thank you for the interview, it was great, but say like, I really enjoyed our conversation, and you sharing why you joined the organization and why you've been there for so long. So that personal piece that they shared because you asked a powerful question is something great to put in that note. So again, it reminds them of, oh, I remember that person that asked that question. I really did like him or her.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. What would you say to maybe people that didn't feel so strong in connecting or maybe having people skills? How would you, what would you recommend them so that they can get better at putting in practice some of the things you just shared?
I think it's a everyday thing. It's an everyday thing. So it doesn't have to just be the business environment. It can be with your family. Practice listening to your family, to your friends. I had, again, one of my clients, we talked about listening and how powerful it can be. And she had small children. Her children were 5 and 4. And so she just sat down and started talking to her children and truly listening, because sometimes with little kids, they talk about things and it becomes background noise and we're like, yeah, okay, the bird flew, okay, great, So, but by truly sitting down and listening to what her children were saying, she opened up this whole other world. And she was in a leadership position, so she was able to translate that into the work environment and truly start to listen to people. So in terms of building those relationships and listening and putting those skills into practice, use your friends and your family as a resource. The next time you call one of your friends, truly listen to them, because people aren't used to being listened to. Listen for that voice tonality, listen for those changes. And you'll just kind of program your brain to kind of pick up those things. And don't even tell people you're doing it. Don't tell people you're doing it. And then what will happen is people are like, oh my God, you were such a great listener. Thank you so much, I needed to get that out. Because so often, we want to interrupt. We want to kind of jump in with a solution. But the best thing that we can kind of do for our friends and family is to let them get it out. And it will program you to not jump in with the answer in an interview scenario, because you'll be used to letting someone finish their thought. So I think start with your friends and family is a great way to just kind of begin those skills. It's like a muscle. You have to kind of work it to make it strong.
What if an interviewer asked you about your weaknesses?
Okay, so here's the thing. I have an issue with that whole weakness question, because it's nonsense. Like, wait, I can say that because I do this for a living. So, what do you say to the question in and of itself is kind of meant to set you up on 2 different levels. One, they want to see what your level of awareness is of yourself, and 2, they want to see, like, okay, can I rattle your cage? So my advice is to just be sincere about and authentic about answering that. Say, you know what I don't do very well is X, but how I compensate for that is to use my strength, which is Y. Because I'm a firm believer in strength-based leadership. Working on your weaknesses does nothing for you. If you put all your time and energy into your weaknesses, at best you will be mediocre. Okay? So have a knowledge of what strengths you have that can offset that. You know, if you're not terribly organized, you can say, you know what, but I have great people connecting skills. So I build a network of people that allow me to kind of keep on pace with the things that I need to do. So I focus on building relationships. You know, and so you come up with your strength that's going to allow to do that. If you haven't taken it, you know, it's called the Clifton Strength Finder. It's something that was very impactful for me as I learned about my strengths years ago. So start to learn what your strengths are. There's a lot of great tools out there, a lot of free tools, honestly. And I think that you can actually take that for free. And get to know your strengths and use those to supplement. So that's how I would answer that question, is talk about your strength as it offsets your weakness. Be aware of what you don't do well, but use your strength as a buttress because it shows that you have a plan for how to handle that effectively.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Any other questions? Well, the last thing for me to do is say thank you. It has been my absolute honor. Oh, do we have another question? Okay, my honor and pleasure to serve you tonight. I think that the work that you do here is amazing, and I just applaud you for having the strength and the courage to invest in yourselves in the way that you have by coming to the Career Network Ministry and learning new skills, because that's not easy. So you know what? I just want to clap for you. So thank you very much. You have a fantastic night, and again, it was my honor and pleasure to be with you tonight.
Terrific, terrific. All right, as we run for the exits, two more thoughts.